Hi, my name's Rachel McLeod, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker and emotional wellness coach. And today we're going to have an Ask Me Anything about anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress. And what we're also going to do is I'm going to start it off with a question that was asked to me in a group about what is traumatic stress. And somebody else asked me this too, and I gave an answer, but I thought I've been thinking I would like to go really deep into this topic, and somebody asked, so I'm going to do that right now. And I encourage you, if you are on with me live, if you're jumping on with me live and you have a question, post that. I will get to it. Um, but I'm going to get started. And I pulled something off um, of oh gosh, I need to have know my resources here. Let me back up and figure this out. It's ISTSS, which is called International. I'm gonna have to look it up, people, because I need to do them right. Um, International Society for Traumatic Stress Studies. So this is from them. You can find this online. Um, I think I'll add a link. We're gonna do all the things here. Let's add the link. Okay. We're winging it to some degree, and that's what's fun about these Ask Me Anythings is we're just going to go where we want to go. Okay, this is where I am working from, and so here we go. um, so you know that my specialty is I help people do the brain work that resolves the root issues of symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress, and actually helps them get rid of those symptoms. So that's really what my specialty is. That's what I'm coming at this with, and my understanding of trauma as it plays out in the healing aspect of it, because that's my business there. I don't get to be one of those people that hook people's brains up to all the gadgets and see what happens and how trauma impacts the brain. I wish I did. I like to go to their trainings. But I'm really in the land of make it stop, which is a wonderful place to be. And so that's where I'm coming from as I talk about this stuff. And like I said, if you're jumping on now, go ahead and drop your questions. Okay, so first of all, they address what's a traumatic event, and I'm going to expand on it because they talk about traumatic events as big T traumas, and these ones are big traumas like abuse and neglect. And I don't want to name all them because I don't want you to be triggered by them here, but these are natural disasters and right big traumas that we're all like, oh yeah, that's a traumatic event. um, on a brain function level, the brain doesn't measure traumatic events. It just responds to events. And so there can even be very small little events that are traumatic to the brain, right? And so we can get post-traumatic stress or traumatic stress from any event that is too painful, too difficult, or the brain doesn't have enough resources to really resolve. And this can be anything from being laughed at school to being called names, being bullied, um, having your feelings hurt, being betrayed by a friend. I mean, all the things. If your brain can't process it, that's really what's most important. It's not about, well, you shouldn't have been traumatized because that was a little event and my event was really big and I should be. It's not, this is a brain function thing, and it's not measured like that. That being said, that the more complex these things are, the more difficult it is for the brains to process these things. And there are things that come into play, like, do you have enough support from your family, from your support system? Do you have the support from your support system to process the things that are going on? And so because really brains are great at doing this work if they get the support that they need. And so the first thing on this is a traumatic event is really any kind of trauma. But if you have really big trauma, please respect it as really big trauma. We call that big T trauma. And then we have all this little t trauma, right? And I look at this from a brain function scenario. So That's trauma. And so there are common responses following a traumatic event. And so that's what we're going to get into. Some people don't have this. Some people can go through big traumas and their brain just will process through. They may have some difficulties in it for a little while, for a short period, but their brain has the resources and the ability to work through things like that. There's studies on that about resilience and resistance and all sorts of things there that you can learn about. But I want to talk about symptoms of PTSD. And there are symptoms, re-experiencing symptoms, not PTSD. Let's rewind. I am working from. I want to stay in the traumatic stress ballpark, and so traumatic stress has several symptoms that go with it, and there are re-experiencing symptoms. And these are where your brain will replay it so that you are really feeling it again. And you might be feeling it in your body, you might be seeing it with your eyes, you might be having visual flashbacks of the scenario, you might be having auditory flashbacks of the scenario where you're hearing the same sounds that happened in the traumatic event. You might be having nightmares while you're sleeping, right? Or even while you're awake, intrusive thoughts, things like that. Um, you might also notice symptoms of avoiding, so avoidance symptoms. And that's really a major component of PTSD and traumatic stresses, where you just want to avoid things that would be upsetting, or that you suspect would be upsetting, or that have proven to be upsetting in the past, and so or that remind you of the trauma. And that would be things like avoiding thinking or talking about the trauma, or also avoiding people, places, activities, or sensations that remind you of the trauma. So that is also what traumatic stress, the symptoms of traumatic stress. Um, and then also negative changes in your thinking and emotions. This is big. And this one I see in most humans. And this is traumatic stress coming up. And we think, oh, it's low self esteem, it's this, it's that. No, this is actually traumatic stress. And it's feeling more down, depressed, angry, or anxious. Many people think I'm just an angry person, and I'm like, let me review your trauma list because I think you might just be traumatized. Um, and and we can think that these are our identity, but they're actually symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress. And these can be resolved, especially when you get the brain to do the resolution. Um, Finding it hard or impossible to feel happy, traumatic stress. Feeling shameful or guilty. How huge is that? Traumatic stress. Feeling distant from other people, losing interest in things you used to enjoy. These are starting to sound like symptoms of depression, which they are, but depression is frequently the result of trauma. The root of depression is frequently trauma. So the symptoms match and overlap. Um, because they result from the same brain function, the same brain malfunction. And so the root of them, usually that will have one root, and that's in trauma, and then it will resolve the symptoms of depression as well. And that's really why I'm always talking about that I help people get rid of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress. If you use these interventions, these are going to help you get rid of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress. They have the root in the same brain function, in the same brain malfunction, and getting the brain to do its healing process without malfunctioning is really how we can get those symptoms to stop. Um, being unable to remember important parts of the trauma, that's a thing. It can go either way, right? Where you can't get the thought out of your head and you can just relive it. You can't get that out. And then the other ones where you just can't access any of the memories. And both are symptoms of the same, of trauma and traumatic stress. Having more negative thoughts about yourself, other people, in the world. That's trauma and traumatic stress. And this is where we have that negative inner critic. That's not supposed to be there. That's traumatic stress. And when we do heal those emotional wounds in there, and the brain has a process for healing those emotional wounds, the negative critic, inner critic, and negative self talk starts shifting and changing on its own. That, yeah. Um, so those are some symptoms. Hyperarousal or emotional physical reactivity is also one of the symptoms of anxiety. A category of symptoms of anxiety of traumatic stress. And so this one is more like be always being on guard or easily startled. Exact that when you have that exaggerated startle response anywhere or disproportionately or like, oh, I overreacted, a lot of that can be traced back to trauma or traumatic stress. Having difficulty concentrating, being quick to anger and aggression. What's interesting is that sometimes the root of ADHD is trauma, that difficulty concentrating, the brain bouncing from one topic to the other. Um, that can be PTSD and not necessarily ADHD. You by all means get a proper diagnosis of that, but I'm just saying heads up. Many of our brain malfunctions can be traced back to traumatic stress. And I'm always about finding the root of them. So, okay, let's see. And they go into a lot of things here about that. It's pretty cool. What's complex PTSD? And so they talk about that, which is I'm gonna move on here, but they have some really wonderful feedback about what that is, and then what are the risk factors for PTSD or complex PTSD following trauma. This is a question many people ask, like, will I get over this? Or what happens if I have another trauma before I haven't finished this trauma? And this is a really great insight into that. And let me tell you, the answer to both of those is that if you can get your brain through its healing process, which you can, then you can resolve any of these things, even if they're complex. And when they're complex on a brain function level, it's kind of like everything's tangled. One trauma lays on top of the other and grows roots through the other. I'm sure that's what it looks like. And so you really got to detangle things and pull it through the brain's healing process and get the brain to fully heal that. And we heal. But they're studying this stuff, so it's really fun to see what information they have um, and learn. So I think I'm going to stop there because I want to answer any questions that are coming up. Yeah, they're talking about treatment options, and you can read that. Compare it to what I'm talking about all the time. I didn't read that. So I wanted to give you a little bit of that information about what traumatic stress is, because I think as I try to I'm always talking about this stuff because I want to give words to it. I spend a lot of time thinking about this, and I spend a lot of time helping people's brains like overcome this and heal. And um, and so I really wanted you to have some specific ideas about this. Good. Yay, Allison. So I hope that was her question. I'm gonna call her out there. It was her question in my Facebook group, and so I hope I answered that for you. But I really, the brain, our brain is really supposed to help us have what we want, and if we're not living how we want to be living, sometimes, and most of the time, this is a belief, right? And I'm putting on funnel glasses because this is my specialty. So I'm going to stay in my specialty as I say this stuff. But your brain is supposed to help you get what you want. And if it can't get what it wants, there's usually a root cause to that. Like if there's a block somewhere, it just cannot create it because of a block. Usually that block is traumatic stress. And sometimes that traumatic stress is something that is generational. It didn't even happen to you, but it was passed down to you in the language that your family spoke or in some of the experiences or things that you witnessed from other people. And so I always am looking for this stuff because it's really such a powerful, the brain, I mean, the brain heals this stuff so fast, so quickly. You know, when I'm working with people, I have been doing this for a while, and even with complex childhood trauma, people can really heal and move many of these and get rid of many symptoms enough to even not qualify, not meet criteria for an anxiety, depression, or trauma disorder in 2 to 6 months. I found that this work requires about 120 to 300 hours of specific and targeted brain work. If you've been following me for a while, you're saying it with me because you know this is how I say it. Um, but and you can do that work in as quickly as you want to. You can do it as slowly as you want to. And so you really have so much power, and you don't even have to believe in it. You can totally be skeptical, and you can try an experiment. Maybe racing thoughts before going to bed. Can my brain make that stop? And you can use some interventions to see if they will be a good fit for your brain and if they will make that stop. And so I really encourage you to suspect everything as traumatic stress. And definitely, um, we are constantly the same process we use to heal traumatic stress, to resolve those issues, because when trauma happens, the brain has to, it's like something happened, and our way of being in the world is just not inclusive of what just happened to us, and how are we going to be alive and safe, how are we going to make this. And so the world view that you have in your brain just kind of shatters, and your brain's job is then to put it back together. And this is actually a huge growth opportunity too, because when that something happens, it expands your awareness, which is tough. But after it's done, your brain has a new way of being in the world. And if it can complete that process, you get a new way of being in the world, and you get more health and wellness. And you get to go back into not having to be in heightened states of survival distress. Until that process is built, your brain is like, I don't know if we're going to live. Everything's survival. And so you're stuck in this place of it's not going on now, but you're not free to live peacefully yet. And so when you're here, and we come here, most of every one of us, I'm not going to say every one of us, most of us are going to come right here to this place where a trauma has happened, and we have to make sense of it. And let me tell you, you don't have to make sense of it, your brain does. You really can just sit beside your brain and do the interventions right beside it, so that your brain's getting the support it needs, and it will be able to do this work better and faster. And so, and really, instead of, what happens is, if there's too much pain, the survival system stops it, and then the pain reduces, and then it tries to heal again, and it only get a little bit of work done at a time. But if you can use some of these interventions, you can really get more work done quickly, because you're reducing the pain levels. You're getting the brain to move the pain through a lot quicker, and that allows you more time in the healing process, without your survival system getting in the way and shutting everything down. And then you have to wait, and then things happen, and then you can heal again. And sometimes people don't ever make it through that process. The pain is too great for the brain to do the healing work. And so that's why it's really wonderful to use tools like my favorite ones, which, again, if you've been following me for a while, you'll know this. If you haven't, watch some of my past videos. I have a Facebook, not a, I have a page on YouTube, and I have almost 100 videos on there talking about this. Um, but the interventions I like, and I like to teach people, are emotional freedom techniques, thought filled therapy, energy medicine, and EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And I actually have videos teaching these for interventions in my Facebook group. And so you can go there and you can learn them, try those interventions out yourself if you'd like to, see if they work. And if you're healing, keep going. Help your brain through every work it wants to do, and you'll watch it heal very, very quickly. Um, so, okay. Mariella says, good info on generational trauma and the brain's capacity to heal. Yes. So good. I'm glad you appreciated that. And yeah, and I was on that note, I was saying that I suspect everything. That's trauma. But let me tell you, it's not like, ADHD is not always trauma. Sometimes it's physical trauma, right? brain injuries, concussions, things like that. But sometimes it's a lack of vitamins and minerals, and sometimes it's brainwave stuff. I mean, and I'm sure there's more. I'm not a special. That's not my specialty. But I do know that it is frequently a symptom of PTSD. So, having said that, let's see if there's anything else I wanted to say. And if you're joining us now, this is an Ask Me Anything about getting rid of symptoms of anxiety, depression, or traumatic stress. And so if you have a question, post that and I will answer it. I've just been talking about and answering the question, what is traumatic stress? And so you can, if you're just getting on now, watch the replay for that. But feel free to jump on in and ask your questions. And I'm just going to keep thinking of ideas to talk about. Oh, a common place that symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress hide and are very difficult, people don't think to look here, um, are and they don't talk about this in that or any of the other ones, but these are absolutely symptoms of PTSD or traumatic stress, and that's especially interpersonal traumas we have with our caregivers or people we're supposed to be bonded with, or attachment wounding. We'll have symptoms of depression show up in our boundaries, the way we hold boundaries. Some of these symptoms look like I can't say no. I just can't say no. Some of these look like I repeatedly put other people's needs before my own. That's a boundary issue. And that's usually because of traumatic stress. And definitely, if it's not immediately traumatic stress to you, it could be generational, that this is just how the family does it because there was a trauma 5 generations back and the system didn't fully heal properly. And so all this stuff was put in to support it, but it wasn't necessarily functional for the rest of the people afterwards. And so boundaries are a big place to find PTSD and post-traumatic stress symptoms. So, and then the other one, I'm going to rewind there. I think I want to say a couple more things about that since I have no questions yet and I can just run with whatever I want to run with. Um, Also, the inability to actually get the words out of your mouth of the boundaries that you want, traumatic stress. Also, if you don't know what you need or what you want, and that you're completely detached or severed from yourself and your needs, your wants, your desires, your passions, that's traumatic stress, almost always. Um, if you are not able to maintain boundaries when people come and push on them, like you can say it, but you can't hold it, or you can hold it one time if they like really if they give you a boundary check once and you just fall to the ground and say, okay, fine, have it, right? That's traumatic stress. And if you so and there's that can be kind of complex because some of that has to do with feelings of unworthiness, traumatic stress, feelings of unworthiness. Um, it can have something to do with fear and that survival system, survival level distress. It can be part of the fight, flight, freeze, or faint response. That is a survival mode. There's so many ways that boundaries can be affected. And then sometimes it's the internal boundaries where you don't have the boundaries that you need within yourself to help yourself be well. And so you'll find yourself violating your own boundaries, traumatic stress. Um, and that can be generational. But it's interesting because I think that that's really something that I like to deal with to resolve trauma by I like to work on it where it comes up, where it's showing up in your life today, right? I like to do that work and I like to make sure clients are equipped to to handle that and to work through that so they don't get stuck in brain states they don't want to be in or that are not helpful to them. And also, a lot of times when we deal with this stuff as it shows up, then we get a lot more space and we are less triggered and our whole system starts to calm down and the stuff that's more complex stays present. So you can get rid of like half of something and then what's left is there. The next thing I really like to do is I like to find this stuff at the root, the origin of this. And a lot of times this is where the trauma happened. I like to work on that directly. Sometimes you can't, and you got to be kind of tricky. I teach people these tricks in my 8-part program, Inner World Transformation, and in therapy, this is stuff I teach and stuff I'm talking about all the time. And so I like to work on that at the root, right? And once the root is out, then and out and resolved, I mean resolved and healed, and that means that that memory is no longer painful, and there's some signs you can tell when the brain has moved this through its healing process. A lot of times, first the emotional pain will be cleared out or resolved or desensitized, diminished, so that you can look back in the memory, and maybe before it would just make you feel so horrible or cry or be afraid, and then after doing some interventions here, then it doesn't hurt anymore. And then you'll start to notice that it becomes more, people are able to look at it objectively, and then they'll start to look at it logically. And that's because it feels to me like it gets to all of that stuff comes through to the thinking center finally. And then that one builds programs, breaks things up, and upgrades your whole system and gets rid of stuff that's no longer serving you, right? So gosh, I just went on a tangent. I had so much fun. I lost my place. I do that. Okay, so I like to work on the root issue, right? And so once that piece comes through, that's a lot, that's a big chunk of this whole problem. But I find that especially when we're talking about stuff we've had since we were 5 and 7 and 10 and 12 and decades ago, our nervous system and our brain has been conditioned to do this pattern. And all of a sudden it doesn't need it anymore, but it's still doing it. It doesn't need it, but it's still doing it. And so it's really nice to do. I like to work on the conditioning layer of this, and so that we can decondition and recondition the brain to the new pattern that you want and that feels good and expansive to you. And so that's the other thing I like to do there. And I do like to, I was talking about with the boundaries. A lot of times when we find we set a boundary or we're afraid to set a boundary, wherever we're having boundary problems, that's that's where the traumatic stress is showing up in the present. And so that's the symptom. The symptom is I can't say what I need to say for myself. That's the symptom. And so we can use an intervention right here. And then we can also follow that into a root. And there's many strategies to get to the original memory where that took place. um, and then resolving that there and then dealing with the conditioning because then all of a sudden your brain is like, hey, we didn't say something there, we didn't say something there, we didn't couldn't this problem was showing up in all these places. And then you can make sure the brain also processes those so that the new program that has been developed and all this work starts plugging in all these places. And what's really fun right here when you do this with boundaries is you'll start to notice that you just are speaking your boundaries. You're not even trying. You're just like, you said something, and then you're like, holy cow, I just said something that I would never say before. And I love it when my clients tell me that because it's just funny and it's fun and it's really exciting because, especially um, with healthy boundaries, many of us have never had them wired in. These are things that our parents could wire in for us when we were children if they had them themselves or our caregivers. But if they don't have these themselves, it doesn't get wired in, even though all the parts are there just ready to be assembled in our little brains. But it doesn't stop. Those parts are still there when we're older, even 50, 60, 70. The parts are still there, it just needs to be assembled. And the brain is ready to do that assembling at any time. There's no time limit on that. And so, um, I did it again. I got so excited about what I was saying. This is why I make notes But also you guys could help me out, throw me a bone by a question, and or we're gonna get off early because I can see that I am in rambling mode. Plus, I'm thinking this stuff through, which I'm gonna enjoy, but we'll see if it makes sense to you. So I was talking about boundaries. I was talking about, I think I'm done with that. I think what I was talking about is that when you when you're when you remove the block, all of a sudden all your energy is moving forward, and it's almost, and it's your authentic energy, it's your authentic self. It's almost like your authentic self just starts jumping out and being herself there. And it's like this work, when we're doing this healing of trauma work, especially complex childhood trauma, or um, and I see this as well with people who have had simpler anxiety disorders, but for a long time, it just starts gathering complexity around it. So, but come on, brain. I think I'm going to hook my brain up here. Let's try this. This helps hook the front and the back of the brain together, up, helps hook them up. And it could just be that I'm having a really good time, or it could be that I need to hook my brain up. So I'm just going to see. We'll just see what happens. Okay, I think Mariella might be helping me track where the heck I was. Okay, yes, good questions. Okay, I'm gonna abandon where I was. Okay, even though I was saying something that I really liked, perhaps it will come back to me. Okay, and the other thing is, I am going to turn my AC on because it's getting a little hot in here. Hold on. Okay. Um, okay, so when a person, Mariella asks, when a person can't maintain boundaries, is that an example of fawning? Like when they want to appear super nice? Yes. Um, and that's just one way of fawning. And and it doesn't necessarily, I want to think about that because I don't think it's a hard yes, but I'm not thinking of any other examples off the top of my head, but there are always exceptions, and the brains are very interesting and unique. So sometimes people can do things that seem very backwards, like letting boundaries happen, but they're in fight mode. And so, or talking a lot and they're in freeze mode. So there's always that possibility. But I would say that the fawning is in there, right? If we people when how brains work is when you set a boundary, um, people brains typically like the boundaries to, they like to make the changes outside themselves first so that they don't have to go in and do the inner reconstruction. And so, and if the boundary's there and they don't have a program for it, or they're surprised by it, or they're not running on their automatic pilot mode, or they are running on their automatic pilot mode and they run into the boundary, it's like the brain comes into this cannot compute place, right? And so distress happens. And so, and a lot of times people will start pushing on the boundary first. Even if they're not intending to do this intentionally, they'll throw a whole fit in front of the boundary. It can be very juvenile or infantile. This, it's like it's a major regression because the brain is like, I don't have a thing for this. Make this stop. Get this out of my way. And so a lot of times when we're setting boundaries, people become very distressed and they go into a survival state, which could be fight, flight, freeze, or faint, or fawn. And so if it's fight mode, that could be very scary. And so in front of that, then it would be easy to fawn and say, "Oh no, no, I'm sorry. You know, I didn't mean to just upset you. I don't need 8 hours of sleep tonight. No, I'll stay up again." And whatever. Or no, no, you go spend the money for that, or, whatever it was, right? Absolutely fawning. Um, and if somebody is throwing that fit and they're in fawning, right? Then the deal is that when people come into boundaries and they go into survival mode, survival energy gets more survival energy unless you know how to work with your brain to shift out of the survival state, or that you've already resolved that you have a subconscious programming that you just don't need to go in a survival state. This happens a lot when in recovering from codependent relationships, right? If somebody becomes upset, usually both will go upset. One of the recovery processes here is how can my partner be distressed and I'm not distressed? How can I be well when my partner is not? Right? And there's things we can do there, and ask the brain to build us a program and help it build a program where they can be distressed and I'm not. And I'm totally in the front of my brain. I'm in a relaxed state. I'm not inventing or consciously or unconsciously terror or survival distress. I'm actually just calm in the face of this. So that place is a really powerful place because you get to choose what you want to do. And when you're in the survival state, you don't get to choose how you're going to behave. You're in a survival mode. The survival part of your brain chooses what you're going to do. And that's why a lot of us, when we're in that mode, are saying all kinds of things, including fawning. And then when we shift back to the front of our brain, we're like, oh my gosh, what did I do? Because now you can think about it. You couldn't think about it before because your survival system shut your thinking system down. So but that there's a lot that goes on with boundary holding that activates the survival system, right? And so and in there are symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress that really need to come out, so that what happens when you take out that the symptoms, the health and the boundaries start coming back automatically. Usually people are like, I need to go get some healthy boundaries. No, they're already in there. They need to be cleaned up and have all of the trauma cleared off of them so that they can actually function well. I don't find that people need to anything outside of themselves when it comes to boundaries. It's just about the brain work to clear them off, go pick which one you want, pull it up, attach some neural pathways to it, and see what it does. And then if I like it, good. If I don't, let's bring it back to the shop. Let's take some of these neural pathways off. Let's get some new neural pathways on here. And oh, I think this is going to be awesome. Let's go see what it does. If I like it, great. If I don't, let's take it back to the shop. There's one of these I don't like, but what if I put this guy on here? Okay, that looks much better. Let's try it again. Ooh, that fits nice. Right? That's how boundaries happen. But we really need to be connected with ourselves first. And so that's some of the first. I don't teach this specifically. It's in my process of how the program works. I have 8 parts, but each part is stacked with several different. When you do the work, you will accomplish several different layers that you'll be aware of later. But I have people do one activity that I know is going to accomplish 3 or 4 things. So, but in the beginning of that, one of the big things is reconnecting with the self. So, because that's where all boundaries will come from. The boundaries that make your life feel amazing and yummy and fluid, they're going to come from you. They're not going to come from somebody else. You can borrow somebody else's boundaries if you want to, because there's nothing wrong with that. Your brain is always learning, and you can learn, hey, I like their boundary, but it's not quite right, or I love it. As a matter of fact, this matches with how we like to do things. So there's lots of great things there, but the boundaries really will come from you. So, yeah, yes, yes. And so, in relating with people, I think we have done ourselves a big disservice by not understanding survival states. And when you're with somebody and all this, and you know that they're kind of like maybe you've asked for some butter. You went to your neighbor's house and you asked for the butter, and they're like, and then you're like, oh no, no worries, and they're like, no, 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 here, have it. You know, there was some survival level stuff in there. I mean, there was internal conflict, right? They had some internal conflict going on, and then they chose, here, you can have it. Did they really mean it? We don't know, because they might not be in that right part of the brain to be able to give a thoughtful, authentic to them answer, right? And this really makes things really, really confusing in relationships. And it's not always for you to figure out what state somebody else is in. And I think as we continue to do this work and it grows and people are more educated on their survival system and other people's survival responses and all the things from the internal self, then and how to even shift, how to work with our brains, then it's going to be very beautiful. And we're not going to have to worry, am I taking advantage of them? Am I setting them into a survival state? They'll be able to take care of it themselves. And that's really why it's so awesome that you guys are doing this work, that we're doing this work, and that we're getting, that these tools are getting to people where, when they need them, how they need them. So let's see. Allison asks, how can you tell if you're authentically irritated at something or if it's a symptomatic irritation from a block? Yes. Um, that's great. Both is important. So if you have irritation from a block or from just, it's just, you're just irritated, this is this isn't a brain state. It's like, this is how I look at it. It's the between the, it's the prefrontal cortex is still on, but the survival system's like, or like maybe it's like this. I don't know if I'm going to go full out fight mode. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm deciding, don't say anything, anyone, because I'm about to go, right? Um, but all of that can be happening for many reasons. And it's a really, this is a really great place to, all this inner work, you're really learning about yourself. When you go in and you find a block, you're going to find out why it was blocked. And when you find out why it was blocked, you're going to know something about you that you may have never known. Or you're going to know something that's going to validate, confirm what you thought you knew but didn't have enough evidence for. And you're just learning about yourself. You're learning what makes you irritated. You need to know this. And guess what? It might not go away because you cannot intervention your preferences away. If you like purple, you can't do enough tapping to not like purple. It's not going to happen, right? Your authentic preferences, they're not going anywhere. You're just going to take the trauma off of them. That's what you're going to do. And you're going to take the anxiety off of them. And then, so as you get through the irritation and you get that clarity about yourself, all of a sudden there's no fighting about it. There's no wondering about it. There's just, I don't like that. How are we going to do this? You know, because you matter, your preferences matter. And in your life, there needs to be room for all of you. And we want to create win-win scenarios. If you don't like something and you're doing it anyway, or you're inviting it into your life anyway, something's not happening right. Your boundaries are, there's something in your boundaries, there's something in, maybe you're fawning, maybe you have inner conflict. In that moment, inner conflict is such a challenging place. And as a matter of fact, I suspect that this is a place that people with patterns of abusing really thrive in and try to create confusion, because the brain state, it's like the brain comes to this place and it's like, I can't do this. I can't make it work. And so it stays here and just kind of rolls around, and you're just stuck in this no man's land where you're not really anywhere. And I don't know. Do I want to stay? I don't, oh, okay, I'll decide for you. Or as your wheels are turning, look at this crazy person, right? Gaslighting, name calling, but really you're just confused. Somebody put their hand on you and you didn't want them to, but you don't know how to say something. So you're like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And you're stuck in this ineffective brain state where you can't keep yourself safe. Right. And that is actually, I think I don't want to just slap traumatic stress on that one, but that confusion can be a symptom of unresolved. It's definitely a symptom of unresolved issues. right? It's something where the brain cannot make something cohesive for you. Like for instance, I had a client today talking about um, they want to um, they're an either or, right? And either or is like the brain has not been able to get in here because brains make gray and they make options. Either they let it go, and if they let it go, that means that they accepted the behavior. And so they don't know how to let it go and not accept the behavior. Because if they let it go, they feel like, well, that means I might be condoning it or approving of it. And so that doesn't make logical sense because the deal is, how do you let it go and not condone it at the same time? Let's go, brain. Let's make that program, right? And so, but but because, and this is what happens because there's that inner conflict, like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do in here. I'm just staying in confusion. That's when we're really vulnerable. And so, um, it's really great to be resolving your issues and making cohesive programs because then you can meet life as it comes to you, right? And if there's a lot of backlogged work that hasn't been done yet, let's get that done because life is happening and we're going to need all this stuff that was all the programs that haven't been built and developed yet. We're going to need those. So we want to pull those through and bring you up to speed with where you're at in your life now. So I would say how you can tell is get to the bottom of it and then you'll know what it is. So great question. Michelle Adams, how can you practice boundaries in a small way? How can you in our daily lives, what's healthy and what's not? Um, this is big because I don't teach this till part 5 in my program. And I don't teach this to my therapy clients until part 5 because if you try to do boundaries and your survival system says this is not safe, but you do it anyway, you're harming yourself. You're not working with yourself. And as a matter of fact, you can create more symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress. I don't have people work through issues with behaviors, except for the behavior of use your intervention. That's what I have them do because I want, especially when there's symptoms of anxiety, depression, traumatic stress going on, which that's what I do. I want them to lead the change with their brain. I want their brain to go first. I don't want them to go first in real life. Throw the brain out there and get the brain moving because if you go out there and you're working against your brain, this is not good. But once your brain can move through some of these aspects, all of a sudden you can come behind it and you have choices. There's more flexibility, there's more health. You can do things and you're not traumatizing yourself or hurting yourself or harming yourself. And so how you can practice boundaries in a small way every day is watch yourself and use your intervention. Pick up emotional freedom techniques and just watch. And I don't recommend using words with emotional freedom techniques while you're doing boundary work because the deal is you need to be able to sink into yourself and hear yourself. So really tuning into yourself. And sometimes words can really block that from happening, especially if you're using someone else's words. And so, but if you're wordy, and there are many of you out there, you'll want to use words because that's your processing style. And so you'll want to be talking about, oh my goodness, look at me. I should have said no. I didn't. I said yes. Why do I keep doing that? I don't know. It makes me sick to my stomach to notice this, whatever. But just that right there in the moment of when you didn't hold your boundaries is seriously powerful brain work. And so what you can do is grab you an intervention that works specifically and targetedly with your survival system and go through your life and help your survival system make it through your life, right? And clean, like if you can engage the survival system, the rest of your brain can do its amazing healing process. It's really phenomenal. And so that's what I would say. And you know me, I am trying to tell you and push down into your brains, do this for 2 hours every day. 5 minutes here, 3 minutes there, 7 minutes there, 10 minutes there. Follow your brain around. And let me tell you, if you are in a gridlock in your brain with symptoms of anxiety, depression, traumatic stress, you got more than 2 hours every day that you could be doing this, right? Because what happens is you're going to use this intervention and you're just coming behind your brain and you're saying, keep going, brain. And your brain will start kicking and swimming forward. And then you'll come up again and you'll see it's getting stuck and you come push it forward. And then it'll kick and keep moving. And then you'll come up behind it using your intervention. You'll push it forward and your brain's moving. The wheels are turning. Change is happening. And I that is the simplest and really that strategy is is a very is the first strategy I start people out with. And it's a very superficial, it's a basic skill, right? It's not a complex um uh expert level skill. But if you don't pick up another skill and that's all you do, you will resolve your anxiety, depression, or trauma disorder. Period. And you will start to learn how your brain works. Now, obviously, there I like, the next strategy that I teach is like that. This strategy of following your brain around is like taking a spoon to this mountain of unresolved work and moving it over to through the pathways, moving it over, and don't knock that. I mean, it looks like a lot of work. It is, but if you stay on this, you're going to move this entire mountain of unresolved stuff. Plus, you never know when your brain says, oh my gosh, that was a lot. Oh, look what else I can do. Move aside. I got this, right? You don't know. And so you might be trying that and you might find, I got this. Look at me. I'm getting emails from people that are just doing the interventions in my group, the free interventions I taught, and they're like, I was able to break through a panic attack, right? This that's all I had. I didn't have my whole program. It took me 3 years to do this, but to move my OCD into remission. But um, and that's a long time. But heck, when you're suffering like that, and it gets better every single time you use the intervention, your brain is a better place to live. So, and if you've got it bad enough, any of the disorders, you do 10 hours of work and you think you are in heaven. You think this is amazing. And somebody else looks at your symptoms like, oh my gosh, that's a lot, but you're like, you have no idea. So so that's really, really powerful. I would not I really want you to hear me say, Michelle, um, what I am not saying, what I do not recommend is go stand up for yourself. Go tell that person no. If you scare the trash out of your survival system, you're going to pay for that. And your survival system is smart. If it noticed that you scared it and it couldn't keep you safe, oh, it's going to build some stuff around that. It's going to be like, oh, she got us. How am I gonna build this thing so she doesn't do that again? You don't need that in your life. Lead with your brain. Put your brain to work. Be tapping. What are we going to do? I don't like this. It keeps happening. I don't want to scream, but I want to scream. And be tapping. Be tapping. Because each one of these taps, you're sending information to your survival system. It's listening. And that's just one intervention. I throw out emotional freedom techniques because it's really easy to learn. It's not for everybody. It's for most people. Most people can get with it really, really well, and you can learn it that fast. And there's no known side effects, and you can't really mess it up. So, but there are other interventions that work, and you really want something that's a mind-body intervention. Um, so, oh, what I was saying was that surface level skill is basic, but the second one I teach is an EMDR strategy, and that one is like taking a truck, one of those little scooper trucks, and you're scooping the unresolved issues through. So that's really cool because you can get a lot of work done that way. And then each strategy is very, very, very specific and guides you to do very specific work. So you're not wandering around wondering what to do next. So you can get more assistance if you need it, if you want it. But if you just pick up the tools and start tapping, you're getting it. You're going to do a lot of work. Jess says, is there a specific intervention for irritability, or does it just depend on the cause? Yes, it's a cause thing. I would, you can tap on irritability, you can use an intervention on irritability when it comes up in the moment. But if you've got overarching irritability, I'm going to tell you there are probably about 10 roots to it. And so you're going to want to resolve each root. And then there's also, if it's ongoing irritability, there's also like the neurological conditioning. Your nervous system or biology kind of becomes addicted to the chemical um, concoction that irritability creates. And so if you get rid of the irritability, it will need, it's like, where are all my chemicals? What about the adrenaline? And so then you'll start creating drama for yourself to be irritable about. And it's like so you really want to work on the irritability at that neurological, biological component, which is conditioning, right? You can, when you, a really wonderful strategy for addiction and cravings is to use an intervention, one of these interventions, when you are feeling cravings. And sometimes the cravings go away right away. And sometimes the cravings don't, and they're like, whatever, go get me my thing. And so you do a couple of rounds of tapping and then you go get your thing, because you don't really want to fight with your survival system, because cravings are the survival system talking. And so, but the next time it comes around, you use an intervention again. And it might say, oh, we don't even need it. I've done this, I've used this with coffee. Um, and I was like, I want my coffee. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to tap. And if I still want my coffee, I'm going to go get it. And I came to 2 hours later, had done all my work. I totally forgot about it. Craving was chopped in half. So, I mean, just karate chopped, done. Um, and I was quickly off coffee after that again. I recently got back on because I learned that decaf really helped me with nausea when I was pregnant. I think I started anyway. You know how addiction is. So, and I haven't since wanted to get rid of it yet, but it's leaving me slowly but surely. But there are other, this is really wonderful for emotional eating. This is wonderful for using interventions on emotional eating, drug use, alcohol. If you're coming off of something, even your pain medication, if you're coming off of psych meds, hopefully under your doctor's, um, you're working with your doctor on that. This is a great thing to use for that. And it'll help with the emotional component of it. Not it Sometimes it helps with the physical stuff, because if you create a shift in one area of your life, of one area of the aspect of the problem, like, right, there's each challenge has an emotional component, a mental component, an energetic component, a chemical component, and perhaps a spiritual component. And so if you make a change in any one of these, the whole thing reorganizes. And sometimes that addiction stuff is somatic, right? And that means that it's mostly emotionally based. And so when you're using interventions, you can really clear out somatic pain, somatic distress very, very quickly. Okay. Yeah. So, yep. So you really want to find the root cause of irritability. And I once discovered that the root cause of my irritability, which quickly would turn to rage, was a vitamin deficiency. And boy, I thought I was a monster, but really, it turns out I was deficient in a vitamin, and especially because it would hit me right at PMS time, and oh, and so um, you do want to find the root cause of that. So let's see. Good. And Melissa, so there are some pounds about Rachel that are really awesome. Rachel McLeod Fan Club is one that's going, and Pound Women Releasing Anxiety, Depression, and PTSD. That's the name of the Facebook group. And oh, I love it. She's like, follow your brain around, Pound, follow your brain around, and Pound Attention and Intervention. Yes, that's the secret. The secret here is attention and intervention. And there's always exceptions to that rule, and the energy medicine practices are really what I found to be the exception, where you really can resolve symptoms without paying attention to the symptoms. And that's really awesome. But if you want to resolve anything, you attention and intervention. You put your brain on it. You say right there, that thing right there, and then you use an intervention in your brain because you're activating the brain's focus, which anything in its focus, it's already starting to take down and put together, build up. And so when you put attention on something and use an intervention, you're really moving the wheels a lot. And that's it in my 8-part program. That's really what I'm teaching people to do. I teach the interventions, but those are available for free. But what I'm teaching people to do is attention it like this, pay attention to it like this, pay attention to it like this. Can you pay attention to it like this? Can you do it like this? And pretty soon people have skills to pay attention to stuff they don't want hanging around in very cohesive, very effective, powerful ways. So, um, oh, Jess asked what I was deficient in. Um, I was deficient, and it's not going to be the same for everybody else. I mean, these deficiencies are different, but I was deficient in B6, and not just B6, but the active form. My liver wasn't converting B6 into the active form of B6. And so, even though I had plenty of B6 in my bloodstream, I wasn't being able to use any of it because my brain wasn't converting it into something I could use. I was also deficient in and um, zinc and apparently zinc and copper ratios create anxiety symptoms. You feel like you're being chased by tigers. I found that to be true. She said that, and I was like, whatever, we'll see. Yeah, no, she was right. And once I got that, and once I got, and magnesium, I got this stuff. I've been tapping for a while. Was worth, through so many things, and I had intrusive thoughts too, and but they weren't really bothering me like they used to. And all of a sudden, I got these vitamins on, and I was just like, this is good. I had no idea what I was still dealing with there, and anyway, that was fantastic. So it's really, I mean, gosh, um, super easy win. Whenever you find the root of something and you resolve it, you get rid of all the symptoms. If you haven't gotten rid of the symptoms, you haven't found the root. And so if the root is a vitamin deficiency or a mineral deficiency or vitamin or mineral deficiency, and you resolve that, the symptoms go away. So you start these vitamins that you're deficient in, and all of a sudden this is gone, this is gone, this is gone. Next thing you're just dealing with these guys. And then you do your work. So, and then you find the rest of the roots. And so that's really, really wonderful. So, and Kara says she's retyping because the first one had too many typos. Okay, I often wake up thinking that someone has come into my home and stolen something from me. I like her purse. Will your program also help with this? I would say yes, absolutely. Um, the brains do this. I'm curious. I wonder what the root of that is. I'm so nosy. This one it could be trauma, right? It could be she's waking up with flashbacks of some sort of a trauma that actually occurred. Um, these are interesting because sometimes there's things we've watched in TV that just got stuck in our subconscious, and like it's like, yeah, what if that does happen? And your brain has to make a program for what if that would happen. And so um, those the things from movies get stuck in there, or we get traumatized by watching some movies, like Poltergeist. Um, and Poltergeist and that one, oh my gosh, um, the the Jenkins lady, I love her. What's her name? Anyway, I totally want to do her trauma work. But she was talking about one that I watched, and oh my gosh, it totally messed me up. Um, oh, she just mentioned it recently. What was it? Oh, I probably don't need to re-traumatize all of you because you're going to be like, yeah, I watched that too. Okay, so Karis Crawford, she has no idea, she says, and she's not a big TV or movie watcher. Um, I'm curious, do you know what you're dreaming about before? Ooh, that's fun. Let me tell you about that. Um, when sometimes people have these dreams, and the dream is all the subconscious materials in the dream. It doesn't make any sense to us, but or sometimes it does. And if you're like a dream, if you know about dreams and that's your gift, then you know what this means. But most of us don't know what our dreams mean when we're cycling through these things. Some of us, I'll say. And but it really doesn't matter. You can take this thing, even though you don't understand it, and you can use interventions on it, and your brain will be able to move through and process the subconscious material and make total sense out of it and resolve your issues, whether or not you ever cognitively understand the dream. And so when people are having dreams, especially ones that they know are associated with stress or with traumas, or just that are uncomfortable. Any dreams, nightmares that come up or that are habitual or reoccurring dreams, all over that. And I've seen people resolve many symptoms through that channel, because you're always looking for the in, how the brain wants to do this work, And so sometimes the brain wants to do the work in dreams. It's just where it wants to do the work. I had one client who was a guy, and he had a ton of trauma, and sexual abuse, and just tons of trauma. And that was just how we processed all of that. And boy, did he start healing. We got rid of so many challenges, just paranoia. Um, I think there was some hallucinations of some sort, but those as well, and through dreaming, through using the interventions on dreams. So don't overlook your dreams, because there's a lot of good stuff in there, especially because when your subconscious, if you can get the back of the brain to work on issues, that there are so many powerful things that happen. And it's nice because they're powerful players. um, like, you can really activate that part of the brain by drawing pictures or telling stories. If I were to meet this person who traumatized me, what would I do? And use an intervention, right? It doesn't matter what the answer is, just use the intervention. I mean, we don't know what you would do, but your survival system, your subconscious, is like, ooh, let me tell the story, move out of the way. So then we do this and we do that, and then all your all that stuff's coming out. So, um, anyway, I hope you followed with that. I think I was just nerding out on it, but okay. Um, yeah. So, okay, just dreams. Okay, no, yeah. So Karis doesn't have any more information, but my program is set up to help you, one, learn how to work with your brain when your brain's having issues in the moments, and then to take those things and to find the root of them and to resolve root issues. We do that for quite a while. And then the other deal is that it's just we're really hunting. I'm teaching you, I'm taking you on a symptom hunt, and we're going and finding symptoms. And so what we find at the bottom of all of this is you, and you're the healthy version of you. And then your brain really has to work to create subconscious programs for who you actually are, not who you were when you were 5, because it hasn't been able to upgrade things to keep up with where you are now, but really who you are, who you want to be. And so that's really, and it's just kind of a journey in the inner world to really make your life pleasant and good and wonderful. So, because that's your brain's job. So that's what I think on that. So absolutely, that's what my program's there for. It's, you don't have to know why things are happening, but you're going to figure it out and then resolve it. And so it's really, I don't think I've said what I want to say yet. I often wake up thinking that someone has come into my home and stolen something from me, and she has no idea about where the root of that's coming from. Will my program help me with that? I believe so. I believe I have nothing else to say on that except for that the entire program is set up to be very flexible so that anybody can use it. But you put your brain stuff in there and it shows you how to go find your stuff, to go find the roots of your things. And I teach multiple options that I've seen work for the majority of people. And usually, most people that work with my program, especially once we get to week 3, which is when I teach all advanced skills, um, usually people in this place they'll grab 1 or 2 things that fit them really, really nice, and they'll go clean. They'll go clean up their inner world, clean up all the trauma off of things. And like that's really all they'll walk away with. And maybe a couple months later, they'll come back to it's like, let me try this other advanced skill. And so they're all there. You can use them when you need them, but usually people have a preference because they'll find what really fits for them then. And yeah, so and then we go through, yeah, the programming, subconscious programming. You know what? Let me tell you that, you know what? I'm gonna try to be all techie over here because I can. And let's see. Okay, I'm putting a big chunk of thing down here. Feel free to ask any questions about that. Okay. Oops, I pressed the wrong button. Uh-oh, I'm still pressing the wrong button. I think, did I put it out there already? Okay. So I just posted in there. It says here's the systematic symptom resolution process that I guide participants through in this online program. So this online program it's inner world transformation. It's available for self study. I wanted to make it available for people to pick it up, start using it, to take a deep dive. And in this, you really get uh, the top training that I've come across through different modalities and trainings, emotional freedom techniques, thought field therapy, um, energy medicine interventions, and EMDR ideas and concepts and training. I actually need to do a live video on that because I like to give it live. That I like to give that live. So, but that's in there as well. It comes with it, and then I explain all 8 parts right there, and of what happens, the nitty gritty, and we go. This program, Inner World Transformation, is also the foundation of my 8-week intensive, which is intensive program, 8 weeks for people who really want my support to guide them through the inner world transformation process. So that's a coaching program that's available on my website. You can learn more about that. But this is the program. This is what we do in each part. Each part is a week, and it's a wonderful. But there's more information about the 8-week intensive on my website. So you can go there to learn more. And then, okay, and then Melissa says, can you talk a little bit more about the journey between finding a root and actually resolving it? Sometimes the brain resolves things as we sleep, however, some stuff not so much. Okay, I'm going to take this in parts. Can I talk a little bit more about the journey between finding a root and actually resolving it? Okay, so especially, I know that, okay, so the journey to finding a root is a healing journey, especially if you're using interventions as you walk. You're basically walking through your brain, spraying your everywhere you walk down with healing juice. That's what we're going to call it. We're spraying healing juice everywhere. So the actual exploration is also healing things. So there's not a lot of difference between resolving the root and finding the root because we're combining both at the same time. And that's why I have people do 2 hours of work a day because we can get a lot of work done. And and okay. So as you're spraying around, your brain is going and it's doing the work. It's doing this healing work, but you're still looking for the root issue. And so as you get to the root, which you're just going to keep going in, there's an association with the symptoms that you're experiencing today and the root issue that might be way in the back of your brain. There's an association, there's a link, there's a neural pathway connection, right? And the trick is that one of the things people with anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress struggle with is that they usually have so many symptoms, it's really hard to grab one. But you got to just grab one. The brain really, I don't think it can do all of them at the same time. But if you grab one, the root has multiple symptoms attached to it, right? It's just spraying out symptoms. But you're just grabbing out here in your daily life, you're just grabbing one symptom. And then right here, right? And then your job here is then to pull on and follow the neural pathway to the root. And there's a lot of tricks to this, but but that pathway right there to the root, we want to use interventions the whole way because we're healing along the way. And if you would imagine this one neural pathway, it's got branches here, branches there. We want to heal as much of those branches as possible. And if you imagine you're walking down, you're spraying this healing, right? If you're spraying the healing everywhere, some of it might get down some of those pathways too, and it does. So those pathways start healing as well. Um, when you get to the root here, then you found the root. And that's really what you do. You travel the pathways in. Now, because there are pathways out, um, I teach a lot of strategies to get to the root because sometimes you can take an off ramp and roll out and you're not at the root, right? And so if you're going to do that, which this is not a bad strategy because everywhere you go and you're using an intervention, you're doing healing work, right? But I also know that you're going to get faster results if we can get in. Now, some people, we have to do a lot of desensitizing to get to the root, especially if it's trauma that they cannot even put their mind to for fear of reliving all of it and being crushed, which is a real thing. Um, we will use the strategy of using all of the off ramps, and we're going to clean up all the off ramps. Okay, I talk about this in the program a lot, and so everywhere you're going, you're doing healing work. It's a you're doing this, and then you'll try again, try to get down there, and maybe you hit a off ramp here and you can't yet, but you're still getting the work done. So it's all valuable. And then when you can get there, then you can do the work to resolve the roots, which I also talk about, and I also give you training on how to do in the program. So that's one piece. Okay, now, so the other thing she said, sometimes the brain resolves things as we sleep. However, some stuff not so much. Yes, um, your brain is always trying to resolve your issues. There's no way to stop that, and you don't want to stop that. But if it cannot complete its process of resolving your issues, hell, okay? Symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress everywhere in your life. It's like if you have two wires coming together and they're not connecting, but every once in a while they touch and they spark everywhere. If you imagine those sparks, symptoms of anxiety, depression, traumatic stress, that's going on all the time. And so your brain is trying to, it sees the sparks and it's like, gosh, what can we do? And it's trying to get those things together, which makes more sparks, and that process just isn't working, right? So but it's always trying to do that healing work. So let's see. um so you'll know, so if you're sleeping just fine, your brain's probably doing it's not a malfunction that you need to work with right now. There's other things you need to get busy on and get busy on those. One of the nice things is usually the brain doesn't say, hey, here's all my problems. Some of you are experiencing that. And what I would say there is don't look at all of them, grab one and go. Keep grabbing one, keep grabbing one. Um, and so when you're sleeping, if you're getting sleep, don't even worry about that yet. We have bigger fish to fry. Leave it alone. If you're waking up with nightmares, right, you can grab that nightmare and you can work on that. And that nightmare that's a signal that the healing process didn't make it. It didn't work. It didn't resolve it. And so because you're and so And the other piece is that while you're working, you're intentionally choosing which things you're going to work on. But while you're doing this, your brain is back there like, oh my gosh, look at all the things we're doing. And it's doing all the healing work it can do, right? This is my international sign for healing, brain weaving work. Okay. So your brain's over here, like just doing nice, flowing, weaving motions, and it's fixing things and resolving things and moving things to the dump and getting things out and bringing new stuff in. And so that's really so pretty soon you're looking at your life and you're not seeing a ton of symptoms. And so, but you're still doing the process of grab one symptom, pull it through. That's really your job right there. And your brain's doing its own thing. And pretty soon you just feel happy. You just starting to feel joyful. And you're starting to feel like you have motivation to do something. And all of a sudden you're starting to feel like you're like a real human again. Right? That's time to just enjoy being a real human again because your brain will let you know what the next piece of work is. Right. Um and with so I'm going to speak of this in two ways, but with my program I've really given you a lot of work to do. Like, we do this, then you're going to do this. I want to keep you busy and keep you motivated, and I found that even though you can do one intervention the whole time, people tend to get bored and then they won't keep working. So I've set it up so that you're going to keep working. You're going to keep working. And um and so but when I was and so you keep working till you're finished, and by the time you're done, you've done 112 hours of specific and targeted brain work. That's a lot. Now, the deal is that if you get your brain moving, no matter how many symptoms you have, after you've put in about 10 hours of any brain work, following your brain around using an intervention, you feel awesome. Things are different. Things are permanently changed and you feel great. And lots of times people just start chilling, hanging out and be like, oh, I'm just going to enjoy this. No, get back to work. Get back to work. Get back to work. And so you really want to get through as much as you can in the shortest amount of time, because you don't want to be doing this phase for longer than necessary. But every 10 or so hours, you just start to feel like, ooh, life is good, but there's more. Keep going. Keep going. Right? And so that's also one of the benefits of having a program to work with, because you have to keep moving. And then there's certain point of like, well, I invested in this. I better watch the next the next training and do the next work. I better get my money's worth out of this. And then you come to the end, and I've pushed you quite a while, or led you quite a while. And so you've done a lot of the work. And that's just stuff that's forever changed. So, because when brains resolve and heal something, it's just like food, you don't eat it twice, right? Now, there might be deeper layers that your brain says, hey, I'd like to work on this new thing, or I'd like to work on a deeper layer of that. And that's normal and to be expected. It's like once you clean out the house, then you live in the house, and then you decide, I think I'd like to redecorate. And so then you're doing little projects of redecoration, and you got to clean up after yourself. And then every once in a while in your house, like the roof needs to be replaced, so you got to do a big project, or you blow a pipe, and so you got to go do a big project. And that's kind of what it's like living in the brain. Okay, so that your symptoms don't come back. It's sometimes I have clients that this doesn't happen to me as often anymore, and I'm learning how to motivate these individuals. So it's not happening as often anymore, but they'll do the work and then they'll stop for a little bit, and then they're like, my symptoms. It's like, hey, this is your brain. You're using it a lot. You got to keep working with it. Keep going with it. Support yourself. There's never a time to kick back and not be with yourself. If yourself runs into a challenge, help yourself out. And if you don't, and you don't take care of the dishes that night, and you don't clean out the toaster, and you don't clean your refrigerator out, and you let water fall on the floor, and you don't like, you're going to have problems. And so, but as you learn to integrate the self-care, which is one of the great things about the program, is that because you stay on this for more than the time it takes to build a new habit, but double that, you've really learned how to do it, and you're really able to stick with yourself. And that's just kind of one of the nice things about having a guide. But let me tell you, as long as you just don't want to suffer from symptoms of anxiety, depression, or traumatic stress, and you're motivated by that, good. Go do your work. If you're motivated because you want to start your own business, or you want to have amazing romance, you want to get the trauma out of the way so you can succeed in these areas of your life, good. Do your work, because you'll get there. You'll get there. So I think that's all for us tonight. We were together for a long time. Okay, so I'm going to see you all later. Wonderful connecting with you. Gosh, it's so wonderful to connect with you all, and um, I'm just really inspired by you and by your questions, by your participation in my Facebook group, by those of you who are emailing me. Um, so wonderful. So I will see you soon. I will see you around. Join the Facebook group if you haven't yet. Watch some videos, learn some interventions. Do it, do it, do it. Work with your brain and really watch your symptoms resolve. So talk with you later. Oh, before I get off, I'm noticing that I don't have a link here to my program, which is fine. You can go to my website, which I've added in the top, and that link will take you to my website. And there you can there's a little button to join my Facebook group. You can get to my Facebook group there. And then there's also a get rid of your symptoms, where you can learn about the services I offer, which is this online program that I'm talking about, and also the coaching program, the therapy services that I provide to Oregon residents only, and to the energy medicine sessions I will be providing in the future. So read up, see what fits for you, what you want to do, and do it. Take some action. At least join the Facebook group. Okay? Take care.